Okay, welcome to Unit 8 Quadrilaterals and Polygons Work. This is mostly about quadrilaterals, but it's also going to be about polygons in general, including triangles and basically quadrilaterals. Triangles are the only ones that we're going to be doing. My name is Mr. Butler. Make sure your name's on your paper because when you turn it in, sometimes people forget. So the first couple of things that we're looking at here is what kind of shapes are these? And when you're looking at a shape, you want to look at the properties that it has. First of all, I see a couple of arrows here. When I see those arrows, those mean parallel. When a pair of lines is parallel, that implies that it might be a parallelogram. The only thing I need to check is, are both pairs of lines parallel? Yes, they are. So that means we have a parallelogram. For this next one, I have pairs of congruent sides. Notice that I have these two pairs of congruent sides. I know those two match because they are marked with a single mark. And if I look at the other ones, they're marked with double marks. Those double marks are going to be congruent as well. So the property that I'm seeing here is I have two pairs of consecutive congruent sides. And if I have two pairs of consecutive congruent sides, if you look at this, you probably already have an intuition as to what the shape is. It's called a kite. Does it fit other descriptions? Yes, it would also fit the description of a quadrilateral, but it's asking for the most specific name. And because it's the most specific name, we got to try and narrow it down the best that we can. So now let's take a look at the next ones here. It says find the measure of each angle indicated. First thing I notice, I got four angles. It's actually a four-sided figure, also known as a quadrilateral. If I wanted to figure out the angles inside any shape in general, I would like to split it up into triangles. Let's go ahead and redraw that a little bit cleaner here. So now I have two triangles. Each of them would be 180. So if I look at one triangle adding up to 180 and another triangle adding up to 180, that tells me that together the quadrilateral is going to have 360 degrees on the interior. I'm going to use that information now. I know that there's 360 degrees on the interior. These two here are 90 based on the right angle corner. And this third one is 80. Now the question mark is the only one I don't know. But all together, if I add up each one, totaling it with all four of them, it's going to equal 360. So I got 90 plus 80 plus a question mark equals 360. So I got to figure out how much this is. Well, 90 plus 90 is 180. Add another 80 to that. That's 260. 260 plus a question mark equals 360. That means that the question mark is going to come out to 100. I can find that out by subtracting 260 from both sides. Let's look at another one that's similar to that. Now the difference between this one and the last one, if you take a look at the last one, number 5, it had all numbers. Now we're looking at number 7. We got some algebra going on. But the properties are the same. We have four angles in a quadrilateral. So what we need to do is add them up to equal 360. So I know it's going to total up to 360. And let's add up the different pieces here. That means we got 85 plus 85 plus 95 plus 8x plus 7 equals 360. If I add up 85 and 85, that's 170. Then I'm going to add 95 and 7 together. How much does that make? 95 and 7 would make 102. And we got the 8x. So we're going to keep simplifying here. 170 and 102 is going to make 272. So now I have to do just a simple two-step equation. Subtract 272 from both sides. And I'll have 8x equals, let's see if we have to borrow here a little bit. It's going to be 35, 35, and 27. That's going to be 88. Now if I divide by 8 on both sides, x equals 11. Now all I have to do is solve for x. It doesn't say find the measure, so I'm done. My answer is x equals 11. So let's try the next one. It's probably going to be a little more advanced. Now we actually have to do more than just find x. We got to find the measure. Whenever you hear the words find the measure, that implies to you that you not only solve for x, but you plug it back in. That's what it's going to tell us to do. So again, I have 4 angles, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I know that they're going to equal 360 when I add them all together. So let's start with that. 94 plus 44x minus 2 plus 110 plus 35x. Okay, we got a lot of stuff simplifying here. The 94, the minus 2, that's going to be 92. And then we add that to 110. That's going to be 202. Now we got the 44 and the 35. Pardon me, and that's going to be 79. Let's see what we get. So I'm going to subtract 202 from both pieces. That means that 79x is equal to, let's see, 60 minus 2 is 58. And here we're going to have 1. Now, I'm kind of expecting this, but this should come out evenly with most of these problems. So I know that when I divide that by 79, it's actually going to equal 2. And if you check that with a calculator, you would find that 158 divided by 79 equals 2. Now that's helpful. We know x equals 2, but that's not the question. The prompt is asking us for what is the measure of angle E. To find the measure of angle E, we actually have to plug it in to the expression for angle E. The measure of angle E equals 44x minus 2. And in this case, x is 2, so it's 44 times 2 minus 2, or 88 minus 2. That means that that angle measure is actually 86 degrees. Remember, if any time that you need to slow this down, you just pause the video or watch it a second time. Find the measurement indicated in each parallelogram. Okay, these are parallelograms, so they're telling us that they're parallelograms. If we know that they're parallelograms, we know something about these lines. For example, these two, top and bottom, are parallel. Similarly, these two here and here, UT and VW, are going to be parallel as well. So when I look at these two angles, the question mark and then the 75 degrees, I see same side interior angles, same side interior angles. And those are supplementary. So that means that 75 plus the question mark is going to add up to 180. So when I do the simplifying on each side here, I'll get that the question mark is going to be 105. Just to double check, if I were to add those together, 105 plus 75, I should get 180. Check. This next one's slightly more advanced, but still the same general idea. We have this angle here, RST, and this angle here, 122, except RST is kind of split up into two pieces. We have the 34 and the question mark. So if we add the 34 and the question mark and the 122 all together, that still makes same side interior angles. So we're still going to have a relationship that adds up to 180. That means I'll have 34 plus a question mark plus 122 equals 180. Well, let's do some simplifying here. 34 and 122, when we add those two together, that would give us 156 equals 180, and then we got the question mark. So if I subtract 156 from both sides, that'll give me the question mark is equal to 24. Let's take a look at the next one. It says solve for x. So we got that some type of equation, an expression that we're looking at. We're going to solve for x. We're going to set them equal to each other or add up to 180. It all depends on where they are. So let's take a look at these first two. I see that it's two same side interior angles again. It's same side interior angles, which means it's going to be supplementary. And supplementary relationships add up to 180. So we have two pieces that add up to 180. We got 4x minus 3 plus 135. Add those together, we should get 180. Now if I simplify the negative 3 and 135, that's going to give me 132. So I still have 4x plus 132 equals 180. I'm going to subtract 132 from both sides. That will give me 4x equals, I got to figure out what's going to be on this side. It should be 48. If I divide both sides by 4, x equals 12. If I have to do anything more, it would have said find the measure, but it just said solve for x. So I'm done with that one. Now for the second one, I'm actually going to do it in a different color just to differentiate a little bit here so you guys don't get confused. We have two angles, but they're on opposite sides of a parallelogram. And on a parallelogram, you have this opposite congruency. Opposite pieces are congruent. Opposite sides are congruent. Opposite angles are congruent. So that means that this 108 is actually equal to 35x plus 3. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. Then I'll get 105 equals 35x. When I divide both sides by 35, not the x, just the 35, that should give me 3. 3 equals x. So those are my answers for x, and both of them. Remember, I don't have to plug it in because in the directions, all it said was solve for x. It didn't actually say find the measure. Now again, we have this more complex relationship. Just so we're a little clear, the 7x minus 2 goes for this angle here. Angle VTU, you could say. So I'm going to look at the 81 degrees, the VTU, that 7x minus 2, and the 52. And if I add all three of those together, I'm going to get 180. Why? Because I know it's a parallelogram, and parallelogram has parallel lines, and same side interior angles are supplementary. That's why. So let's add them together. 81 plus 7x minus 2 plus 52 is going to add up to our 180 degrees. That's our supplementary relationship. So if we simplify on the left side here, we got 81, negative 2, and 52. That's going to give me 131. So we have 7x plus 131 equals 180. So I'm going to subtract 131 from both sides. I should get 49 equals 7x. Then if I divide both sides by 7, x equals 7. Do I have to do anything more? Nope, because all they did was say solve for x. X equals 7. Remember, if we have these three angles adding up to 180, it's the same thing as when we only had two angles adding up to 180. The difference this time is that one of those two angles was split. But still, supplementary relationship, 180 degrees. Find the measurement. That means solve, then plug in. Find the measurement. So look at these pieces here. We again know that it's a parallelogram. In a parallelogram, we have an opposite congruent relationship. In other words, opposites are congruent. So we have opposite angles here. Those are going to be congruent. X plus 120 is equal to 2x plus 120. Now, you're going to get something a little bit interesting here. If I subtract x from both sides, and we subtract 120 from both sides, you're going to get x equals 0. Is that possible? It sure is. X can equal 0. And then if we were to plug it into either one of these, that'd be 0 plus 120 and 0 plus 120. That means that the measure of angle in this case, this angle down here, is 120 degrees. Similarly, we got a relationship between these angles, and then we got to plug it back in to find this angle up there, angle B. Now I know that I have three angles here, but it's really a supplementary relationship, so that means that we have 37 plus 56x plus 1 plus 86x, and altogether that's going to equal 180. If I simplify the 37 and 1, that's going to give me 38. So I have 38 plus, let's see what we'd get from the other two numbers. This is going to be 56 and 86, that's 142x. So if I subtract 38 from both sides, magically I have 142x equals 142. Well, this should be pretty obvious at this point. X has to be 1 in order for this to be true. But if I were to simplify both sides, I would get x equals 1. So now I got to figure out what angle B is. I know that the measure of angle B is equal to 86x. Well, x is 1, so that's just 86 times 1, or 86 degrees. So when it says find a measure, we got to solve for x first and then plug it back in. All right, now we have parallelograms and we have some properties going on here with the diagonals. One thing to remember for all parallelograms, the diagonals bisect. And if they bisect each other, that means that each of the diagonals is going to be cut into 2 equal pieces. In other words, how can we mark that visually? That means that SF and FU are the same value. FR and FT are also the same value. So they give us SF. They're saying that this is 20. Well, if we look at the other side, FU, that's also going to be 20. This is a pretty straightforward problem. FU equals 20, or UF equals 20. You just have to look visually at the picture and see what is it asking you. In this case, we just have to recognize that it was bisected. Therefore, those 2 pieces were equal. Let's look at one that's similar. It says HU is 9, so I'm going to go ahead and mark that. I know that that's the same as this side, which is HW. That's also 9. Then it's asking me WU. Now the difference here is this one is actually asking about the whole length, not just one bisected half. So if I want to know the whole length there, I know that WU is actually equal to 18. This time it's asking me to solve for x. Well, if WU equals 18 and WU is also x plus 9, let's try and figure out what that would equal for x. So this is an equation. 18 equals x plus 9. So I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. And that gives me 9 equals x. Let's keep doing this. All right, we got some more, but now the relationships are getting a little more complex, a little bit more algebra going in with them. So we have WJ. WJ is actually x plus 4. And JU is 3x minus 2. We know that those 2 pieces are equal because they were bisected by the other diagonal. So I know that x plus 4 is actually equal to 3x minus 2. That being said, now I can do some algebra and figure out what x is going to equal. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. I'll subtract x from both sides. That'll give me 6 equals 2x. When I divide by 2, x equals 3. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. Let's do this next one in a different color, just so we don't get confused on which ones we're working on. We know that BL is 2x minus 2. 2x minus 2. And it says BD, the whole thing, so that's just half of it, but the whole thing is 2x plus 14. So something interesting is happening here. We know that BL plus LD is equal to the whole thing, BD. We also know that LD is the same thing as BL. And I know that BL is actually 2x minus 2. So I got to double that up because there's 2 of them to make the whole piece. And the whole piece is 2x plus 14. So it's not always that the 2 pieces are equal. If we have just one short piece and then the whole piece, that means that the short piece, there has to be 2 of them to add up to the whole one. If I simplify both sides, I'm going to be getting 4x minus 4 equals 2x plus 14. I'm going to add 4 to both sides, subtract 2x. Then our algebra is going to give us 18 equals 2x. Divide by 2, divide by 2, x equals 9. Not too bad. Just remember, be very careful whether or not you're doing two halves are equal to each other, or if you have the whole and the half. Pardon me. Let's draw that back in blue here. Whether you have just half versus the whole thing. So you got to be really careful and watch which pieces are you given. It totally changes the problem. Now we're going to be talking about mid-segments. Mid-segments. Mid-segments are like an average segment. It's right in the middle. And for something to be an average, whenever you're finding an average, you're going to add up the pieces and divide by the number that they are. In other words, I have 2 pieces. So that means that the average is going to be 10 plus 12 divided by 2. Now, if you were using some common sense, you could probably figure out the average between 10 and 12. The number right in the middle is going to be 11. But let's just double check it with our little calculation here. 10 plus 12 would be 22 divided by 2. That definitely equals 11. So this middle piece here is 11 units. Let's try another one that's similar to that. Now this one is asking about the base. Not the mid-segment, but the base. So we know that the top piece is 13, the middle is 20, and then the bottom we don't know. But I do know if I took the top and the bottom and added them together and divided by 2, in other words, found the average, I would get the middle. Which in this case is 20. So let's use this kind of relationship and do some algebra to see what we can get. I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of this denominator. Simplify it, just 1 over 1. That means the question mark plus 13 is going to equal 40. When I subtract 13 from both sides, I get that the question mark equals 27. So this side should be 27. Now there's another way you could have done this. I could have noticed that the difference between 27 and 13 is 7. And then if I think about going even further from 20 to the next number, if I add 7 again, that means I'm going to go to 27. So you can do it either algebraically or just with logic and reasoning. Both ways work. Sometimes algebraic is a little more solid, but not the only way to work. All right. For example, here, when your algebra is going to be a little more complex, then it's going to take a little bit more time, a little bit more setup. So we're going to take the top and bottom, we're going to average them, and then we're going to get the middle. That means that we have 19 plus 27. We're going to divide that by 2. And that's going to give us the middle piece. So the average of the top and bottom is going to equal the middle, which is 3x plus 2. Now to get rid of this denominator of 2, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. That simplifies the left side to just 19 plus 27. And on the right side, I'm going to have 6x plus 4 if I distribute that 2. Did I have to do it that way? No, but that's just probably the way that we're most consistent with. I like to get rid of those denominators first. On the left side, if I simplify it, I'll have 30 plus another 16. That's going to give me 46. On the right side, I'll have 6x plus 4. If I subtract 4 from both sides, that gives me 42 equals 6x. Divide by 6, divide by 6. X equals 7. Did it ask me to do anything else? No, it just said solve for x. So I am done. That's all we had to do for that one. We're going to finish with this one for part 1 of the video, and then I'll do the second half shortly after. So now we have a top, we have a bottom, and we got a middle. And I know that the top plus the bottom divided by 2, in other words, the average of those equals the middle. So let's go ahead and replace all those pieces with the algebraic expressions that we have. That gives me x plus 2 for the top, plus 3x plus 8 for the bottom, divided by 2, equals the middle, which in this case is negative 9 plus 4x. I'm going to simplify a little bit of the top after I get rid of this 2, so let's get rid of this 2 first. I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 to simplify that 2 over 2. Then I'm going to have x plus 2 plus 3x plus 8 equals, I got to distribute this 2 over here. It's going to give me negative 18 plus 4x. So as I'm looking at this, I notice that I have, on the left side, I can simplify things a little bit. I'm going to have x and 3x, that's going to give me 4x. And then I'll have 2 and 8, which equals, oh, pardon me, this 4x here on the right side should be 8x. Let's take away this equal sign. 4x, and then we add the 2 and 8, and that's going to give us 10. So 4x plus 10 is equal to negative 18 plus 8x. I got to get the x's together, so I'm going to subtract 4x over here. And I'm going to add 18 to the other side. Altogether, that gives me 28 on the left. And on the right, I'm going to have 4x, because the 18's make a 0, and the 4x's make a 0. And if we simplify, we get that 7 equals x. Now, we're not done. Why are we not done? Because it said find the length. It didn't say find x. It said find the actual length. So I got to take this number and I got to plug it in to x for the mid segment, because that's the piece that it's asking me to find. So that means that negative 9 plus 4 times 7, let's see what we're going to get. That's negative 9 plus 28 equals 19. So that's the actual value. That is the answer that we would bubble in on a multiple choice test. All right, that's it for part 1 of the video. I'm going to do 50 through 100 in the second part. Thank you, and come back for the part 2.